Hi, Vanessa McCarthy, and welcome to what I'm hoping will be at least a series of 12 podcasts. Having just a natural chat with you all about things that compliance people either feel or go through or have issues with, or not so much on what to do for compliance, more to do with them and their job and understanding what a compliance position is or could be, or maybe just help get through it. I've spent a lot of time in compliance positions, in training providers, in governments, talking through audits, about audits, with audits, and have found that there's a lot of people who still struggle with the actual feeling of being in those fairly high stressful situations. And a lot of what I do has to do with changing the mindset of how to change compliance as a prickly and uncomfortable situation into something sweet that is quite positive and beneficial for lots of people. So I want to talk to everybody about, or with you all, about some emotional, labour intensive situations that hopefully help either give you support or clarity. I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how the sound is going to go. I don't know what I hope to do is be consistent and provide these information and not get uncomfortable myself. Um, Even though I've been doing this for a very long time, I still get very comfortable. I can get uncomfortable during situations of meetings, depending on who's in the meeting. I try very hard not to show it, but that's what I do. As much as I would like to do more speaking, I still have to push myself out there to be a speaker. Panels and online is super easy because I'm in a comfortable situation. And once we get started to talk about certain things or whatever it is we're talking about, it just flows and any uncomfortableness kind of comes together. But being in front of other people sometimes can be quite daunting. And so I understand from a situation of not wanting to do it, but sometimes you really need to go out there and do it. So the first one I wanted to talk about was the emotional labour of compliance and why it's an invisible but potentially heavy situation to be in. So if you're interested, just stick along. The area of emotional labour when it comes to compliance work, I think it has an especially heavy situation for women because we tend to hold a lot more emotion than men, or at least are concerned that we might share too much of it and become emotional or distressed or upset. Men obviously could probably do that, but I can only talk from a women's perspective. Um, when you're talking about roles that carry invisible weight, sure, there's probably lots of them that do it. Again, I can only talk about the roles that I've been in that you may be in at the moment. And obviously, there's nothing in the standards that deal with a compliance position or positions that do compliance activities and the emotional toll it might take on you. So it's really important to understand how to translate those complex requirements of a standard into plain language to not only help you deal with any emotional stress that you might be going in, but maybe other people around you. Because that's the other thing, right? People tend to either play off other people's emotions, or it might be reflective because somebody else is stressed, you become stressed, even if you weren't in the first place. So everybody understanding complex requirements in plain English, in plain tasks that happen daily in your organization might be one of those ways to maybe de-escalate or release some of that emotional burden you might be having. Other things are maybe you might take on are absorbing the frustrations of others, like trainers. They might feel very frustrated about compliance requirements. There might be a fact of, well, they think there's only one way of doing it, and therefore that's the only way they want to do it. And a lot of that burden is taken on by the compliance person because it's seen as your responsibility to help them across the line. You take an emotional weight when you are trying to calm other people down. So you might absorb their frustration, and then you have to turn it around and give it back to the point of, well, everybody calm the situation down. This is what's going to happen during audits. Sometimes I find when it's all planned activity, or even doing mock audits beforehand leading up to it, of what could be asked for, or how to respond to an auditor, or what's expected of anybody that gets called. It might go, okay, well, we do this all the time, so that actually releases and reduces both frustration and keeps people more calm. You might be considered as the fixer of problems or the provider of solutions. So some people thrive in that environment. If you've been chucked into a position of compliance for whatever reason, you may not be that type of person, but the beautiful thing about that compliance position can sometimes be you don't actually have to be the one to come up with the solution. You have to be the one to talk to other people about finding the solution. So that might be that fixer sort of flip to remove some of that heavy weight and emotional burden you might be feeling. If you find you're holding on to the responsibility of risks that others either don't see or they feel is not their responsibility, sometimes your inability, could you say, and I've been there, you feel like you could just do it better than the others anyway. You have to be very careful with that, and you have to learn very quickly to say, no, let's deal with the situation that's an activity as an RTO as a whole, because at the end of the day, the fit and proper person is the one who has to hold the responsibility for the RTO ultimately. That's not to say that you can't work as a team and make sure everybody's got that frame of mind of working together as a team. So don't feel you have to take everybody's emotional weight regarding an audit on by yourself, because if you do, you'll end up very quickly burning out. And the other situation might be you can have an invisible weight of emotion if you feel like you are the buffer between teams. So you are the one that's either talking to the auditors and then have to go and find and gather it from the team, when the team should have probably already provided that proactively themselves. So that might be something else that you need to have a look at. Now, this might seem very gender biased, and I apologize if this triggers anybody or is considered to be outdated. Historically, women have generally come up through the path of work being the emotional caretakers, if you like. They're the mothering kind, so to speak. That definitely isn't necessarily the way it is in society and workplaces today. And I think that's a good thing from a community perspective, as well as dealing with situations. Statistically, however, there are more women in compliance than there are men. So this may be the case. I'd love to hear from you as a comment, knowingly that by doing this, I've openly created a situation now where people can comment and troll and do whatever you want to do. You go for it. Everybody's allowed an opinion. It's neither here nor there. Happy to have a discussion. But that's something that if you are a male in this industry and you are taking on that burden, then you've got the same issues that everybody else has. Try and work out, negotiate how to release some of that weight and anxieties that it could potentially bring. So carrying a lot of emotional weight for compliance can sometimes also be due to the fact that you might have the position as a label or a title, but don't actually have the authority or responsibility assigned to it. I've seen this many times. I wish it would stop happening. I think it's really important that if you're giving it a title, no matter what the title is, whether it's compliance or otherwise, you should be listing all the different types of responsibility and authority that contains. I have personally not taken a job because they said it would be expected to be this particular level of authority, but there was no budget, no actual management responsibility assigned to it. So it's like, well, I'm not going to be the dog's body, so to speak, to be kicked when other people don't do their job and their role when it is their responsibility, if I'm not taking and being paid for the responsibility. So always watch that sort of very tricky situation. I think the other thing of why it could be heavy in the parts that we've been talking about is the fact that you might be managing conflict without any either recognition or training in negotiation. Um, our skills and knowledge aren't just about the standards, it has to be about how to get the complexity across into a daily situation, the shared responsibility of activities, and then don't hold on to all the stress and emotion that other people might be feeling. Keep working with people to actually reduce any tension that you might find. Audits can be quite a highly emotional climate. And when I've worked with a variety of RTOs when I was an external auditor, that was one of the first things I tried to do is identify the fact, hey, we're not here to, I don't, auditors these days that it's come and gone, and there's been a roller coaster of change. But at the end of the day, audits and reviews and performance assessments, whatever you want to call it, even validations, they're not there to identify people as the problem. They're there to identify what the line in the sand is and whether the RTO's evidence actually meets it, or whether you go over and above, which is always lots of great things to find. So don't absorb other people's stress and strain. Learn to release it. Stay calm within yourself. And if it's not clear to you and you find you are getting all emotional, then you need to sort of take those moments of however it is you plan to release that energy, because it's all energy. It sometimes shows up, emotional weight can sometimes show up either feeling drained after a simple conversation, or being always that, oh, go and ask so and so, Vanessa, whatever, if there's a problem, or find out. Delegation's fantastic if you've got that ability to do that in your organization. You might be the only person, or then you're going to have everything. So the only thing you can do is maybe lean on a network or an industry relationship that you might have to say, hey, we have to do this. I'm not sure how this is going to work with us. Let's see if we can work out a solution together. So that might be one way, working as a team, even though they're not your team. Maybe also to try and soften messages regarding compliance and audit or performance with this is going really well. These are the things we're finding that we're still concerned about, because this is the requirement we have to achieve. How can we do this together? Those sorts of things make people spread the load, identify the concern isn't with necessarily them, it's more to do with the evidence and the process that you're trying to achieve. Maybe also too is learn some mediation and negotiation skills, always good for PD. And then always, always, always remove any blame culture. So blaming others for compliance decisions that you didn't make is not necessarily a great thing to do for anybody. Blame never has worked throughout the ages of compliance. Is pointless. People take own responsibility. It might have been somebody else's actions, but you may have had a level of responsibility somewhere along the line, and identify maybe it's a systems issue or a lack of control issue or a lack of monitoring, management, measurement, you can name it. All those things can be a concern, but blaming never helps. So let's work out other ways to maybe reduce this load. Think about whether it's an emotional work issue rather than your personality. Look at it from a situational point of view. If somebody else was in this situation, what would you say to them? That might, have a reflection. Journaling and reflecting on a situation rather than letting it eat inside you and holding on to something related to a compliance activity. Sometimes what I find is a lot of my solutions come while I'm sleeping. Write down the problem before you go to sleep. I know this sounds very woohoo and la la, but your brain keeps working even if you're not conscious of it. And sometimes some things will pop in your head. It's like when you can't remember somebody's name or an actor or a song or a title. If you stop thinking about it, sometimes it will come to you. So, well, that's how it works for me anyway. Maybe share a responsibility, share the situation if you can. Say it's not necessarily a person thing. It's okay, this is the problem we're having. I don't know how else to describe it. Do you understand for me? So maybe we can work together in how to label it or redefine it so that it makes sense to more people who can actually bring in the information themselves that you didn't know about. Also use data to depersonalize any conflict you find. Using, for example, when you're doing validation and sampling, the samples will give you the data of what a problem was that you knew, but at least you can say, look, out of this many samples, this is the situation. This is what we thought it was going to be. And the data is there to say, yes, it actually is. So let's fix the problem. And maybe also setting boundaries really early, clearly, and consistently apply them. So when people keep coming to you with the same problem or the same issue, just go, okay, let's set this down now of roles and responsibilities. What is the actual system problem rather than the same problem keep coming up all the time? And then you can actually action it together or from a systematic point of view. So if you're too emotional or you're carrying emotional labor that others don't see, then hopefully today we've put some little lids or highlights or titles and areas sort of to place for you. And yeah, we'll hopefully come back and do another episode. I thought it was going to be a little bit harder than this. Hopefully, it's really good. Happy to find out. Leave your comments, your responses. We'll see. So, Vanessa McCarthy, make sure you hit like, subscribe, do all your comments and things. I'd really love to achieve a whole heap of goals that I have for the 26-27 financial year. So, how about we do that together by you learning some things and maybe giving me some ideas on what it is you kind of need from a support perspective and what you like listening to. So, thanks very much.